Many of the times in the interview, I ask candidates a very simple and basic question. Can they tell me what are the key pillars of a typical market? Unfortunately, very rarely I get the full and complete answer. In the next few minutes, I'll try to explain you what are these key pillars which comprises a typical market. Before I get into that, it's important to understand that any market is defined in respect to any product or a service which a company would like to sell in a market. Now, let's come to the key pillars of the market. So, there are five key pillars of any marketplace. The first and probably the most important pillar of any market is the demand. You can also say the customers or the buyers who are ultimately going to buy those products or services. Let's understand it with an example of a particular sector. Let's take the automobile industry as that a sector. If you look into the automobile industry, there are two sets of the buyers. The one set of the buyers are the people like you and me who buy the cars. Let's take an example of Maruti. We may be buying a car from Maruti or Tata or Mahindra. But then at the same time, Maruti, Tata and Mahindra, they are buying a lot of components, a lot of parts from their suppliers in order to produce the finished car. So you can see that there are two sets of the customer. One is the retail consumers, the another is the businesses who are buying the components or the parts or other raw materials from other businesses. Now look at the second most important pillar of any market, and that's the supply side. You can also say the sellers or the manufacturers. Now supply side is generally structured into two parts, the organized and unorganized. When you talk about the organized is essentially small, medium or the large enterprises who are operating in that market, and they are probably working into a set of defined rules and the regulations in that industry in a particular structure, and their sales can be tracked and are traceable. However, when you look at the unorganized sector may be quite fragmented. They are quite small or probably the proprietary or a very small partnership firms which will be operating under certain rules and regulations, but probably not in a very defined way, and also it's not possible to track and trace their sales and the revenue. So if you look into the supply side, as I said, the organized and the unorganized, these are the two key important the players to watch into. Now if you look into the third pillar, which is again a very fundamental, are the channel partners. Now the channel partners are the people who connect the demand and the supply. These can be distributors, retailers, wholesalers, importers, or even the logistic service providers. Now these channel partners can be operated into two format. They can be operated in an online format and they can be operated in an offline format. In the offline format, they may be having their own brick and mortar structures, the stores from where they can they sell those products, and in the online structure it may be operating through an e-commerce platform. Now let's look at the fourth most important pillar. The fourth most important pillar are the regulators or the government body. Any market, for whatever product or service you talk about, they will have to operate under rules and the regulations defined by the policy makers. Let's take an example of the telecom sector. In the telecom sector, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India (TRAI), they set the rules and regulations for the players to operate in that sector. In the case of the food and beverage sector, you have FSSAI, Food Safety Standard Association of India, who define the rules and the regulations. And this is very fundamental for any market, for any players to operate in any market, because they have to follow those rules and the regulation. Last but not the least, the fifth most important pillar in any typical market are the influencers. Now these influencers may not be directly involved in buying and selling of the goods, but these are quite instrumental in influencing the buying nature, the buying behavior, or probably decision making of potential customers and the potential buyers. Let's take an example of the fashion industry. In the case of the fashion industry, you will find a lot of fashion bloggers, the key magazines with the people generally refer to get to know about the new fashion trends, or even the celebrities for that matter. If you look into the other sectors, for example, the infrastructure or the automobile and the other engineering sectors, you can have architect, engineering design consultants who play quite an important role in influencing the buyers to decide what kind of a specification and the functional products they should be buying into. So if I have to just summarize the five key pillars of any market, the first and the foremost is the demand, which is essentially the customers or the buyers. The second one is the supply, and on the supply side can be sellers or the manufacturers. And supply side is structured into two way. It can be organized or unorganized. The third most important pillar is the channel partners, and your channel partners are essentially the people who are connecting the supply and demand. And the fourth most important pillar are the regulators and the government bodies who are defining the policies and the regulations. And the fifth and the last most important pillar are the influencers. So if you combine all those five pillars, then you will have a proper market in which you can operate and sell the product and your services. So this is how any marketplace is structured. I hope you like this video and this easy explanation of what are the key fundamental pillars of any market.